Imagine spending years in a box, utterly alone, then being told to simply rejoin the world. What happens when your brain forgets how to be human? This isn't just about freedom. It's about the terrifying fight to reconnect with the reality you've been brutally isolated from. Prepare to see the hidden scars of solitary. Also, don't forget to subscribe. Now, picture this. A heavy door opens. Sunlight floods in. A person walks out of prison after years locked away. Free at last? But something's wrong. The person stands frozen. Cars rushing by sound like explosions. A stranger's smile looks like a threat. Even picking what to eat feels impossible. The brain is screaming danger at everything. This isn't just any former prisoner. This is someone who spent years in solitary confinement, and their fight for freedom? It just began. Most people think solitary means sitting alone for a few days. The reality is darker. Some people spend 23 hours a day in a cell smaller than a parking space, for months, for years, sometimes for decades. The longest recorded? Over 40 years. But here's what nobody talks about. What happens to your brain when you finally get out? Let's meet the first clue. Scientists put people who survived solitary into brain scanners. What they found shocked them. Parts of the brain had actually shrunk, not a little. We're talking about the hippocampus, the part that helps you remember things and understand where you are. In some people, it was significantly smaller, like a muscle that wasted away from never being used. But it gets stranger. These people could be standing in a grocery store, completely safe, and their brain would flood with panic. Why? Because for years their brain learned one lesson. Other people equal danger. Talking equals punishment. Movement equals threat. And you can't just unlearn that. Here's something even doctors didn't expect. Some people started having hallucinations. Not while in solitary, that's been known for years. No, they started seeing things after they got out. Months later. Sometimes years later. Their brain had rewired itself in isolation. And nobody knew how to rewire it back. If this is already making you think differently about what we call punishment, hit subscribe. This gets deeper. Now we need to talk about something the system doesn't advertise. Researchers tracked people released from prison. They split them into two groups. Those who spent time in regular prison, and those who came from solitary confinement. Both groups faced the same world, same challenges, same barriers. But one group had a clock ticking much, much faster. People released straight from solitary to the streets came back to prison in a median of just 12 months. The others? 27 months. More than double. Why? Think about it. You've been in a silent box. No practice talking to people. No practice making choices. No practice controlling your emotions when things go wrong. Then suddenly you're dropped on a street corner and told, good luck. You don't even know how to ride a bus anymore. But the system does something even more puzzling. In some states, they release people directly from solitary to complete freedom. No transition. No step down. Just, door opens, you're free, figure it out. It's like taking someone who's been in a coma and telling them to run a marathon tomorrow. Here's where things get cruel in a quieter way. Our person gets out. They need a job, any job. They apply everywhere. But there's a box on most applications. Have you been convicted of a felony? Check yes, and the application goes in the trash. Studies show the unemployment rate for former prisoners is 5 times higher than everyone else. Now, add the solitary factor. Imagine you finally get an interview. You have to sit across from a stranger. Make eye contact. Read their facial expressions. Have a normal conversation. But your brain hasn't done this in years. You forget what you were saying mid-sentence. The interviewer's neutral face looks angry to you. You start sweating. Your hands shake. You leave early because the panic is too strong. They don't hire you, and you don't even know why you couldn't just act normal. The job applications pile up, rejection after rejection. And here's the twist. Many people can't even get jobs that require licenses. Barber, plumber, contractor all need licenses. and many states automatically ban people with felony records. The door to regular life is locked from the outside. No job means no money. No money means no home. But even if our person had money, there's another barrier waiting. Public housing, the affordable option for people struggling, bans most people with felony records. Private landlords run background checks. Families who might take you in live in public housing themselves and could lose their home if you move in. The numbers tell a horror story. Former prisoners are 10 times more likely to be homeless than everyone else. Now imagine being homeless when crowds terrify you, when strangers feel dangerous, when you need silence and solitude to feel safe, but you also know isolation destroys you. You're trapped between two nightmares. Some people end up living in their cars. Others find shelters, but shelters are crowded, noisy, chaotic, everything that triggers someone from solitary. Many end up on the streets, where studies show they face extremely high rates of death from suicide and overdose in the first 2 weeks after release. Let's pause and look at who actually ends up in solitary. Researchers examined prisons in Pennsylvania and found something disturbing. By age 32, about 11% of black men had experienced solitary confinement. Want to guess the percentage for white men? 1.4%. That's not a small gap. That's a canyon. And before anyone says maybe there's more misconduct, researchers check that. There was no evidence that black prisoners committed more rule violations. They were just more likely to be sent to solitary for the same behavior. This pattern repeats across the country. Different prisons, different states. Same result. The people most likely to suffer the brain damage, the employment barriers, the housing crisis, and the spiral back to prison weren't randomly selected. The system chose them. Let's go back to the brain for a moment. That shrunken hippocampus we mentioned, it doesn't just make you forget where you put your keys. It makes you forget important appointments, job interviews, meetings with your parole officer. Miss those meetings, back to prison. Some people develop what looks like early dementia. They're 35 years old but struggling to remember conversations from yesterday. They walk into rooms and forget why. They can't follow multi-step instructions. Employers think they're lazy or stupid. They're neither. Their brain was injured by isolation. But here's the cruelest part. Most doctors don't know how to diagnose this. There's no standard treatment. No rehabilitation program. The person knows something is deeply wrong, but nobody can fix it. They're expected to succeed with broken equipment. Our person finally finds a place to stay. A family member takes a risk and lets them move in. First night, they can't sleep. The sounds of other people breathing, moving, existing, it's overwhelming. They end up sleeping in a closet because it's the only space that feels safe. Their family doesn't understand. You're free now, just relax. But the person can't explain that their brain is screaming danger signals 24/7. That making eye contact feels physically painful. That hearing someone laugh makes them flinch. Relationships that survived years of prison often break within months of someone returning from solitary. Partners leave. Kids don't recognize this changed person. Friends stop calling. The loneliness they felt in that cell, it follows them outside. But now it's worse because they're surrounded by people and still utterly alone. Want to know if there's any hope in this story? Drop a comment with your thoughts so far. Let's connect the dots. No job, no home, broken relationships, a brain that doesn't work right, panic attacks in crowds, memories failing, parole officer breathing down your neck. What do? Some people try to self-medicate. Drugs or alcohol quiet the screaming in their brain for a little while. Then the addiction adds another layer of problems. Others simply give up. They violate parole on purpose because prison, even solitary, feels more predictable than this chaos. The statistics back this up. People from solitary return to prison faster. They cycle through the system over and over. And here's the truly twisted part. Each time they go back, they're more likely to be sent to solitary again. The behavior, caused by solitary gets them punished with more solitary. It's a machine that feeds on itself. But wait, this can't be the end of the story, because something unexpected is happening. In quiet corners far from headlines, people are fighting back against this machine. In Oregon, they created something called step-down programs. Instead of releasing people straight from solitary to the streets, they gradually reintroduce them to social contact. First an hour a day with others, then 2 hours, then 4. They're teaching brains to be human again, slowly. Other places created therapeutic communities, special units where people work on mental health before release. They practice conversations. They learn to manage panic. They rebuild the skills isolation destroyed. And here's the shocking part. It works. People who go through these programs come back to prison at much lower rates. They find jobs. They reconnect with families. Their brains start to heal. Not completely. Maybe never completely, but enough. Let's talk about money for a second. Keeping someone in solitary costs about $75,000 per year. Sometimes more. That's taxpayer money. But the real cost? That's hidden. Someone cycles through prison 5 times because they can't reintegrate. That's years of imprisonment costs. Emergency room visits when they overdose. Welfare and housing assistance if they can't work. Police time. Court time. One study estimated that every person who successfully reintegrates instead of cycling back saves the system over $500,000. We're not just destroying people. We're burning money to do it. Here's something to think about. We call solitary confinement administrative segregation. We call it the SHU, Special Housing Unit. We use clean words for an unclean thing. But what if we called it what it actually is? Deliberate brain damage. Because that's what the science shows. Put someone in isolation long enough, and you will change their brain structure. You will damage their ability to function in society. You will make it nearly impossible for them to reintegrate. And then we blame them when they can't. The question isn't, why do people from solitary struggle so much? The question is, why do we still do this when we know what it causes? Remember that person who walked out of prison at the beginning of this story? They could be anyone. A teenager who got in a fight and was labeled a gang threat. A person with mental illness who acted out and was isolated for their own safety. Someone who talked back to a guard one too many times. Studies show that many people sent to solitary weren't there for violent offenses. They were there for breaking prison rules. Sometimes rules as simple as disrespecting staff. Years in a box, brain damage, a destroyed future. For talking back, that person is fighting every day to rewire a brain that was deliberately broken. To find work in a system designed to exclude them. To build relationships when connection feels dangerous. To stay free when everything pushes them back toward prison. They're fighting to become human again. And most people will never know their name, never hear their story, never understand what that box did to them. But now, you know, if this changed how you see our justice system, subscribe and share this with someone who needs to see it. These stories need to be told. The box is supposed to be punishment for a crime, but what comes after? That's punishment for being human. And until we face that truth, the cycle continues. Door opens. Person walks out. The fight begins. Again and again and again.